Hey, this is Ancestral Voices. I'm your host, Scott Delaney. Today, I had the wonderful pleasure of interviewing Kelly Hanna, and I hope you will be as moved by her story as I was. Enjoy. All right. Hey, welcome. This is the second interview.
All right, awesome.
Really happy to have Kelly Hanna with a microphone in front of her face. Kelly's been a dear friend for about 4 years. One of the people I wish that I just was able to spend more time with. Every time I get to spend time with you, it's like really enriching. And then I walk away and I'm like, man, that was really, that was just what I needed. And then it's always too long until I get to do it again. So work on that.
Yeah, definitely.
How are you?
I am doing really, really well.
All right. So I'm going to start off just like testing your memory. Right?
Okay, perfect.
You have a sterling freaking memory. So let me ask you this. How long ago did you write your memoir, your book?
I had always wanted to write a book, probably starting when I was about 25 or 26, because I had a real interesting childhood and then lifetime up until then. And it was always in the back of my mind. And then when I was diagnosed with cancer and the doctors told me pretty much that I was going to die, I thought, oh, I better hurry up and write my book or it's never going to get done. So I wrote it while I was going through chemotherapy. It was through a program through the University of Toledo with one of their professors, Jane Bradley. She is an author and a professor at the University of Toledo, and it was a writing program with cancer patients where we were to get out our emotions, and once a week we met at a class with some of her students, and we just wrote all kinds of poems and wrote different stories about our experiences. And then Jane asked me one day after a class, said, hey, would you like to write an autobiography and I'll publish it for you? I said, well, absolutely. So she actually delivered me my published books while I was in the hospital with my final reconstructive surgery in December of 2012.
Wow. How did you need to contact like family members and other people to remember some of the stories from your childhood? Because you have clearer memories of your childhood than I do of my own.
No, I didn't ask anybody about anything. I just started narrating my life and writing it down as it was coming from my brain to my hand.
So you grew up like a stone's throw from where we are right now.
Right.
Tell me about your house and your siblings and your parents.
Well,
as much as you want.
I grew up in Sylvania Township. It's still called Sylvania Township as far as I know. Road called Whiteford, which is a pretty well-known road. And we were just a few blocks from the state line into Michigan. And we had a lot of land, and we had chicken farm, and we had ducks, and we always had a swimming pool. Every winter, my dad always made us an ice skating rink. We all had bikes. We all had baseball and softball gear. There was lots of kids in our neighborhood. And what I remember the most is the summer times when all the kids would get together and we'd all ride our bikes to this one corner and we'd play baseball games and soccer games and tag and ghost in the graveyard. And then since we had a swimming pool and hardly anybody else did, everybody came to our house and went swimming. At night, we'd all come at our house and go. We'd play like Ghost in the Graveyard and hide and seek, and then we'd all run and splash around in the pool, and then we'd go into the garden and get all kinds of rotten tomatoes, and we'd hide in the bushes in front of our house and whip them at all the cars that were going by. One night a white Corvette was coming by.
Oh, yeah.
and we slammed it with so many tomatoes. It was hilarious. The dude slammed on his brakes and got out and started chasing us. And we all ran and jumped into the pool with our clothes on. And my mom came out and defended us. And she was like, these kids have been in the pool all night long. They never did anything, blah, blah, blah. It was awesome. We got away with it.
Oh.
We did a lot of clean fun back then.
So did you have a best friend growing up?
Not really. Our family was always kind of ostracized because we were poor, and most of the other kids were pretty well off. So we were always picked on. Our family was constantly bullied because we were poor. And my mom was a nut. And everybody knew who she was because she was so flamboyant and so obnoxious and rude and made a scene everywhere she went and was a true embarrassment to the family constantly. And then my dad, he was really, really well known all over the place with kids because he loved children. He worked for bowling teams as the president of bowling leagues, the treasurer of bowling leagues. He worked for the Sylvania Area Recreation Coalition for a number of years as the president and the treasurer. He formed all of the baseball leagues and softball leagues and basketball leagues and soccer leagues for the town of Sylvania for a number of years.
Wow.
And then when my oldest brother, Rick, got into high school, then my dad kind of attached himself to the athletic department at Northview, and he and Jen Glace were like best friends. They were together all the time on weekends. They were always golfing and bowling and all that kind of stuff. So we were always a sports family as far as my dad was concerned. And then my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and we did whatever we could to just stay away from her because she was crazy. So my childhood was a lot of school activities. I did whatever I could to not be at home. So I was always at school, always involved in sports, did whatever I could to get up as soon as I could, get out of the house, come home as late as I could, get cleaned up, go to bed, get up the next day, and get the heck out of the house again. I started working when I was 14, just so I had a reason to not go home.
Where'd you start working at 14?
My very first job was at Imperial Lanes.
Oh, yeah.
And my older brother worked at the counter and was a pin setter there. And we knew the owners through all of our bowling. And there was an older gentleman, Mr. Greenberg, who leased the snack bar in the bowling alley. And he hired me to work on Saturdays and Sundays. So I ran the snack bar. I was like the short order cook and did all that kind of stuff. So I worked on weekends there. Like I was there on Saturday mornings from about 8 o'clock in the morning until probably 10 o'clock at night. And then on Sundays I would go to church, and then I'd be at the bowling alley from probably 1 o'clock until probably 9 in the evening. So that was a lot of fun.
So that's a real shift.
Yeah, I worked.
What about child labor laws? Were you?
Well, you know,
all under the table.
Yeah, it was all totally under the table. He gave me $3 an hour cash, and then whatever tips I could make.
Wow.
So
did you ever protest your wages?
Never, man. Are you kidding me? I was making good money. Bank that money. Bank that money. I bought my first car with my own money from working there.
Wow.
Bought my class ring with my money from working there.
Two things. This is a shorter answer, so I'll go with this one first. What was your first car?
My first car was a Volkswagen Bug, and it was yellow with a red door.
I think if you would have given me two guesses, I probably would have got that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, where did you guys go to church, and was your whole family involved? Describe that.
At first, yes. We went to St. James Lutheran Church, which is on Sylvania Avenue in Brockton, still there. And we used to go there as a family. And then something happened between my mom and her parents. And I don't know what it was because I was a child and they didn't tell us ever and always kept this revealed. But my grandparents also had gone to that church, my mom's mom and dad. And all of a sudden, we were not allowed to go there anymore. My parents stopped going. They stopped taking us to Sunday school. We weren't allowed to go because my grandparents went there and we weren't allowed to see my grandparents. So then when I turned 16 and got my driver's license, I started going back to church on my own because I had my own car and I was like, I'm going to church because I wanted to. And I continued going to that church for another number of years, actually until I was 18. So I went for another 2 years and I just kept it secret from my mom and dad. I told them I was going to work and I was really going to church.
That's obviously, we'll get into this more later, but your faith is the cornerstone of your life.
Always has been.
Okay, that was what I was curious about. Even like when you were 16 through 18, was it really a compass for you? Was it was that your safe place? Or?
You're gonna make me cry. Back then, my church was my family because my biological family was not my family. My mother was crazy and she made all of us hate each other. I had a sister and 2 brothers growing up. I was the middle child. And there was a lot of physical and emotional abuse. We were beat all the time. And my family was my church. My pastor was more to me than anybody else in my life at that point in time. And then the summer after I graduated high school, I had started going to barber college, like right away. I'd been out of school like 2 weeks. And I started going to barber college and I was still going to church. But then my pastor had a heart attack. And some other kind of trauma happened, and I still never found out what exactly happened. But my pastor had left the church and left his wife, his family, the city, everything. Left everything and moved away. And I was so traumatized by that, I left the church as well. I never stopped believing in God or in Jesus, but I felt that organized religion was not my place to worship the Lord at that point in time. And so I didn't connect with a true church congregation until my mid-30s.
Wow.
Excuse me.
What was how old were you at that time when he left? When it kind of
in my I was 18.
Oh, okay. So that's when you were 18. That's
yeah, it's like that summer before I turned 19 because so, like I said, as soon as I graduated high school, I just had like a week off, 2 weeks or whatever, and I went right into barber college, and that was just a calendar year. So by the time I was 19, I was graduated from barber college and working as a barber, and still hadn't gone back to a church, but still believed in the Lord, still, studied the Bible and ran around doing as many random acts of kindness that I could, and spread love however I could.
Yeah.
A lot of free haircuts.
Yeah. How long did you do? How long were you a barber?
Well, I can still cut hair, not so well anymore because of my vision, but I stopped purchasing a license probably in 1995 because by that time I had gotten my nursing license, and that made me more money than the barber license, so I just gave that up. But I still always had hair cutting equipment, and there are certain people that I've been doing their hair for 25 years. I have a whole family out in Lucky, Ohio that has been tremendous to me. I've known them for the past 30 years, and I used to do hair for about 7 or 8 of those people on a regular basis.
Not anymore?
Not anymore, no. But I used to go out like once a month. I would make a date to go out to Lucky, Ohio, and everybody'd come over, and we'd have a huge potluck, and I'd be in the living room cutting everybody's hair, and everybody else in the kitchen getting something to eat, and have a big old party, and then we'd all get drunk and have a bonfire. It was great. Parties out in Lucky, man. I had lots and lots of parties out in Lucky in my lifetime.
Who's the family? We're going to give a shout out here?
Oh, yeah. Kelly and Sam, my buddies. The 2 major families of Lucky, Ohio merged together with Sam and Kelly. It was the Jacobs family and the Borcherding families. And their son, Brandon, is just a couple of months older than my daughter, Sabrina. So when Kelly and I met in nursing school at Owens, our babies grew up together because she and I were together all the time. So that was a lot of fun.
So being a barber is one of those kind of careers that I have a little bit of jealousy of, because there's very few types of work where you can start the task that you're going to do for your customer and be done with it within an hour and see a difference, have someone be happy and feel like you were able to exercise a gift, right? Like, right. Like that's did you enjoy doing that work?
Oh my God, I loved it. It was like artwork.
Yeah.
Because you'd have somebody come and sit in your chair, and they had such a mess, and they'd be like, I just don't even know what, just cut it somehow, just do something. And then you would look at them and the shape of their face and how they carry themselves, and then you cut their hair according to them, not according to a design, so to speak, because no haircut is a precision haircut. A haircut matches the person.
Right.
Because nobody is symmetrical. Not everybody's ears are equal. Not everybody's eyes are equal or eyebrows are equal. So you can't have a complete symmetrical haircut ever. You have to cut it to the person.
32 years old. Almost 33 on Thursday. The first time I ever had my hair cut by a true barber was last year down near Orlando. Mm-hmm. And a black fella who had done it for decades. And I was kind of skeptical, right? I go into this place. I'm like, this little bit of me. I'm like, oh no, I went into the wrong barber shop. Like, I know the black folks' hair is very different than mine.
Right.
And this gentleman, whose name was Joe, told me more about how I should be treating and cutting my hair than I had ever learned in 30 years of wandering around the planet.
I bet.
And it was like it was so interesting to have someone who has been doing that work for a long time and taking it very seriously educate you on what's going to look best and be healthiest for your own scalp. And I was inspired.
Well,
like,
there is a huge, huge difference between a barber and a cosmetologist or a hairdresser. Huge different. The methods of how we cut hair are different. The way we study the head and the hair is a lot different. And then the methods that we use are a lot different. So barbers can legally use clippers and razors. Beauticians cannot. They can use trimmers, but they can't use true clippers or razors.
That's interesting.
And legally, barbers can't do nails.
That's where my guy came up short. I went in for the
whole shebang, and
I can't even remember the word.
Couldn't get your mani-pedi, could you?
Couldn't get my... Nope.
No, but you know what? You had enough fur. He probably could have etched something great on your back.
Or shoulders or chest.
Right?
Yeah. We'll do a video version of this someday, and people will go, "Oh, I get that joke from the second one. That's really funny. That guy's fur coated." So then, what made you want to get into nursing after doing the work as a barber?
Well, I loved cutting hair. It was really, really, really great. A lot of fun. But I ended up getting pregnant. And as my belly grew, I couldn't reach people to cut their hair anymore. Plus, it was a lot of standing and it hurt my legs.
Yeah.
So I had to take some time off from cutting hair to have my baby. And in the meantime, I ended up homeless and went through some trials and then decided to go to nursing school because at the time there was a huge nursing shortage. It was a job where I could work nights, which is what I wanted to do initially anyway. It offered great insurance for a single parent. And somebody else was the boss because as a barber, I was self-employed.
Right.
And the burden of insurance and overhead was on me. But if I was somebody else's employee, that was all taken away and I was just grabbing a paycheck. So I got into a program and hurried up and got my nursing degree and jumped out there and started playing nurse. So I used cutting hair and delivering pizzas to finance my nursing career.
So you glossed over a few things there that are probably an entire podcast episode or interview unto themselves, right?
You're right.
So you have a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And you told me a bit of information a while ago, which you're welcome to elaborate on as little or as much as you want, that you wanted to have a child, but you didn't want the complications of having a relationship with a man.
Absolutely.
I'm going to scoot your mic closer, and I'm going to listen for a few minutes here.
Okay. Well, first of all, my father always taught me to be a very, very strong, independent woman. And at the time, I felt a need to change my life. I was hanging out with a lot of people I probably shouldn't have been. I was doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing. And I felt that having a child would give me responsibility, make me more mature, and better my life, which it did. However, I didn't want the complication of somebody else's opinion or baggage. I just wanted to be alone, me and my baby against the world. I didn't want anything else. So the guy that I was dating, I told him that there was no chance I could get pregnant. And as soon as I did get pregnant, I left, and that was that. Um, I did end up telling him about the pregnancy after I had the baby.
Hmm.
And he and I talked for a number of years, and he actually met my daughter, Sabrina. And then he and I parted ways again when he decided that he didn't want any kind of relationship with us. And that was his choice, and I had absolutely no problem with it because I never wanted him around in the first place. I only brought him around because Sabrina wanted to meet him. And I let her meet him, and then that played out however it was supposed to play out.
There's a lot of complicated storylines there, you know. When he was connected with you and Sabrina, like, how did he feel? What was his response?
At first, he was super excited about it.
Wow.
How they met. I was living here in Ohio. He lived in Florida. I decided to take a vacation for a month and took Sabrina down to Florida, and we spent a whole month down there with him. Went to Disney, went to the beach, had birthday with her and him together and all that kind of stuff. We got along really great, had a wonderful time. But he had a girlfriend who was jealous of me and Sabrina, I guess. And shortly after we left and came home to Ohio, she broke up with him.
Oh.
And that was her problem, not mine. I didn't want him back. I never gave them any indication that I wanted to be with him whatsoever. That was not ever a plan. But that was in her head. Because Sabrina and her father got along so well, and he just fell in love with his child. And that's why he ended up ending our relationship later, is because he finally met a woman he wanted to marry and didn't want to tell her about us. So he broke all ties with us because of this other woman that he met. And I understood that, and I had no problem with it. I'm like, you know what? That's you. If you don't want to be around your child, that's your loss. You know, I didn't feel bad about it.
Right.
So I never wanted him around in the first place. So it didn't bother me. Bye, Felicia.
It's complicated on his end because it's like you're on cruise control going along. You think that something is in the past is the past, and then you have this new, completely life-altering piece of information. And it's very unusual to be put in a situation where you get to choose your level of involvement with something that consequential.
Right.
Usually life is like, hey, jackass, I'm here to, everything's different now, and you have no choice in it.
Right.
You know, but he had a...
Oh, he had a free ticket.
Mm.
I was just like, thanks for being my sperm donor. See you later. But he had good genetics. You know, he was a nice, tall, good-looking dude.
Yeah.
My daughter turned out gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I did make a good decision there.
Yeah. How do you miss or feel like you wish you had like the normal kind of family structure?
Nope.
Because you had it as a child. And, you know, quote unquote normal. The math added up, but
yeah, I lived in a nuclear family, but it wasn't a happy home.
right.
I had lots of friends that seemed like they had happy homes, but now that I'm an adult and I look back, I see that, you know, everybody had a dysfunctional family.
So you just
we were all a mess.
Yeah. Everyone screwed up. You had the privilege of controlling, for a time, the culture of your home completely on your own, you know.
Right. I had the upper hand, you know. It was my house, my rules, my remote control, my daughter, she'll do as I want her to do. And I was fortunate enough to have a decent job, and she was able to go to a great school system. She got a beautiful education. She had lots of great friends. I was able to afford her to have lots of vacations and to never want for anything. I spoiled her rotten.
Good.
And now that's backfiring, though. I should have never done that.
How?
Because now she's a little brat.
Well, you
live and you learn.
When a parent criticizes their child, it's like a tree getting mad at the fruit that falls from it. Where does the fruit come from?
Exactly. Oh, I know. I made the monster. I won't deny it.
I made the monster.
I made that monster. That's my own fault.
She's great.
She is, most of the time.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing you glossed over, that is, like I said, a story unto itself.
Yes.
How long were you without a house?
Oh.
And give me the time frame. Was it while you were in school or?
No, I was. All right. We're going to have to backtrack a little bit. All right. I was in Barber College. And while I was doing Barber College, I also worked at Domino's Pizza. And I delivered pizzas, and I worked inside the store on the phone, and I made pizzas. And it just so happened at the store that I worked at, I was the only female employee. Everybody else was a dude. So our store got picked to open a little kiosk at the Lucas County Fair, or whatever the fair was when they used to have them down at the sports arena before that place turned into a fire trap. So I was working at the little booth for Domino's Pizza at this carnival, and I met a carny, and his name was Don, and he was really cute. So after we get off work, he and I'd go and we'd get high and play cards and do all of whatever the carnies would do, and we'd hang out. And so I had like this nice little short affair with this carny for a week. And right before he had to leave town to go to the next town, he had come down to the Barber College where I was, and he let me give him a perm. Because he had longer, straight hair, and he let me perm his hair because that was the dude thing back then, to have your little.
What year are we talking?
Oh man,
a little mullet with a perm. In the back?
A mullet with a perm. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, that look didn't age very well.
Right. Well, that's what I turned him into, and he was hot though because he had a great tan. He was looking good. So anyway, his dad owned the carnival. I didn't know that at the time, but I found out later.
Wow.
So on their summers off, they had this huge estate on the water down in Florida. And after I got out of Barber College and I graduated, I went into business with this guy up here in Toledo, and we had a shop together over at Great Eastern Shopping Center. And this dude, Don, kept saying, move down to Florida with me, move down to Florida with me. So one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I said later on, and I packed up everything I owned in my car, and I took off and went down to Florida to hang out with this dude, Don, at their little waterfront estate in Florida, which was absolutely beautiful. We were living high on the hog, man. They were growing pot, and we had video games in the house and a pool table and parties all the time. And oh my God, it was amazing. And I instantly got a job at a Domino's Pizza down in Daytona Beach because we were living near Daytona Beach. And I climbed up the ladder in just a matter of months and ended up being the manager of one of the biggest corporate stores in Daytona Beach. We did over $300,000 worth of sales in a week because we had, 1,700 hotels and motels in our delivery area.
Right.
Yeah, man, it was amazing. And I was just making money and doing drugs and having fun and hanging out and partying. And oh my God, my life was amazing. And I was meeting all these famous people because 2 blocks away from my Domino's shop was the Ocean Center that held all the concerts. So every time a band came in, they would hire us to cater. So I'd go deliver all the pizzas to the band, and I got to hang out with all the bands all the time.
Give me some name drops here.
Oh, I can't. But man, oh man, I hung out with some bands, let me tell you. So that was amazing. So then I broke up with that dude. And I was living with some of the people that I knew from Domino's down there in Florida. And then that's when I met Sabrina's dad. He
so he's from Florida.
Yeah, he was from Florida. That's where I met him. And we started dating. And he had lied to me about how old he was. He was younger than I thought he was because he was a big dude. And turns out, anyway, I got pregnant and I didn't tell him. I left. Didn't tell him until after I had her. I actually called him from the hospital when I had her. But in the meantime, he had a motorcycle and I took his motorcycle one day and I got in an accident and I broke my leg and I ended up in the hospital. And that's when I found out I was pregnant.
Whoa.
And so I was scared. I was like, oh man, I'm 19. I'm down here living alone. What am I going to do? Well, my sister was in Georgia in the Air Force at Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta, Georgia. So she was like, come stay with me for a little bit. I'll take care of you. So she came and got me when I got out of the hospital, took me up to Georgia, and I stayed with her for a couple of months while I was healing. And then my mom was like, oh, come back to Ohio. You can move in with us and everything will be great. Come home, blah, 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 blah. So then my sister and I decided to come home for the holidays. And we end up in the airport at Toledo. And my mom comes and picks up my sister and she won't let me get in the car. She goes, I'm not going to let no hussy in my car. You can't come to my house, you whore. Unwed mother. You need to go have an abortion. How dare you? So there I was at the airport with my stuff with nowhere to go. So they, security called the police and the police took me downtown and it's like, what are we going to do with you? You're pregnant. You got a cast on your leg. You're on crutches. So they sent me to the beach house, which is downtown, but then they wouldn't let me stay there. So I was homeless for a little while. And
this is cold. You said holidays.
Yeah. It was over Christmas.
So it was freezing.
Yeah, it was cold out. So
why wouldn't the shelter...
The lady that ran the shelter said that I would be too much of a nuisance because I was on crutches and the bedrooms were upstairs. And so they couldn't accommodate me. So I had a friend that let me stay at her house for a little while. And my aunt hid me at her house for a little while. And then when I finally got my cast off, I was able to stay at the shelter. But by then, it was close to the end of my pregnancy. And they told me I couldn't stay there once I had my baby. So I had to find somewhere else to go. And I couldn't get on social services because I didn't have an address. So when I actually did go into labor, I was still actually homeless. And I had my daughter at Flower Hospital. And they instantly called in children's services and tried to take my baby from me because I had nowhere to go. I was homeless. But luckily, God stepped in, and one of the volunteers at Flower Hospital happened to be a nun who ran a shelter for wayward women on the east side of Toledo called the Aurora House. Wow. And Sister Dorothy Nussbaum took me and my baby home to the Aurora House and let me stay with her until I could get on welfare and get welfare housing and get into nursing school. So that's how that went. It was a fun time.
How much is Dorothy Nussbaum still alive?
I don't believe so. I think she passed away. About 10 years ago, I heard that she won a Jefferson Award, though. So that was really awesome. I kept in contact with her for a few years, but then with my job and my life and everything, I lost contact with everybody because once I became a nurse, I lived in Sylvania, but I worked in Detroit. Yeah. So all of my friends and socialization was either out in Lucky, Ohio, or in the Detroit area with my coworkers. So I never really had Toledo friends. And I worked in Detroit for 14 years until Sabrina was graduating high school. And then instead of her taking off and going to college somewhere, she stayed here in Toledo and went to UT, and I took off and I went to be a travel nurse. And I did that for 7 years until I got hit with cancer. And then the day I got diagnosed with my cancer was the last day I ever worked.
How long in total, including at the Aurora House, when you left Daytona area, or rather Valdosta, how long was it? Was it Was it about a year? Because you just assumed 9 months.
It was from November of 86 until July of 87. Because Sabrina was born July 23rd of 87. And my sister and I had come back for Christmas. So it was like December 20th or something like that, the 21st, when we flew home. Because I sold my car for a plane ticket. I had a Mustang, and I sold my car for a plane ticket home. Because I couldn't drive it.
I got
it. Oh, man, if anybody was... You think this isn't a video. My eye just fell out. Somebody get my eye.
It's a perfect time. What a great segue.
Oh my God.
Because he just talked about... Okay, traveling nurse, 7 years of that, diagnosed with cancer. For the record, as these things don't necessarily translate for audio, Kelly's glass eye just plopped on the floor.
I was crying so hard, my tears just washed it right out. Not the first time it's ever happened.
Boy, oh my gosh.
I lost my poor meatball. Oh my goodness. So anyway, what's up?
I hope that happens again someday.
It happens all the time.
Okay. Wow. The first one we did, no one's eye fell out. We did have Jake falling asleep because he had just done probably a 16-hour work day.
Yeah.
So we looked over. I think we asked a question in his direction, and Gary, who was the other interviewee, and I looked over, and it just in his work clothes, passed out. Like, he just ran out of gas, and now we have an eyeball falling out.
Right.
This is really fun. I can't wait to see what happens next. Are you good though?
I'm fine.
Right. Sweet.
I'm good. Next question.
Now that we're sitting here giggling, when you got to the cancer chapter, and then the comic relief came in. But before we get there, let's talk. Tell me about being a traveling nurse. Take a minute.
Man.
It sounded like quite an interesting adventure.
Being a traveling nurse was so incredible. The United States is amazing. There are so many different aspects, so many different regions. The geography changes so much from one spot to another. And I was so blessed to be able to see all of it.
Replayed the eyeball thing. I'm like a kid.
Do you want to play with it?
No. That is again. That's another one of those things that could be a 30-minute response talking about the privilege of traveling. That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. I was working this horrible, mundane job at a VA in Detroit. I worked for the government. Talk about the most boring job in the world, because the government is the worst boss ever. Hashtag. Fuck. Oh my God. The government has their head up their ass in everything they do. If it's stupid and wrong, that's their policy. If it makes sense, you can't do it. And that's how they run their business.
What an interesting contrast, because then when you're a traveling nurse, you're more or less self-employed, right?
Exactly. So I don't have to put up with any of the crap anywhere. None of the politics, none of the cat fights, none of the cliques. Because when you're a traveler, the equipment is the same. The disease processes are the same. The treatments are the same. The only thing that's different is the geography and what people look like. Your personalities are all the same. In healthcare, your ER nurses all have the same type of cynical disposition with a very twisted sense of humor. And those are my kind of peeps. We will find humor in anything. And we can wipe shit with one hand and eat a peanut butter sandwich with the other.
That
doesn't bother us at all. It looks the same.
Yeah.
Is this my Snickers or is this a turd? I don't know. Take a bite. We're so used to that kind of stuff.
That's the main reason you can't do it now, because your eye isn't working well enough.
No kidding. I'd have to be like sniffing everything and licking it. Stop licking everything, Kelly.
We're gonna have some massive editing to do.
But anyway, traveling was so amazing because the company that I worked for was such a large company that I could pick any kind of job I wanted. There was just this huge computer database of any type of nursing in any city, in any state I wanted to go to. It was my pick of the litter. So I would call my boss and say, you know what? I want to go to Colorado. Find me a job in Eastern Colorado. And she'd call me back with 7 or 8 different jobs and go, which one do you want? And then she'd set up a phone interview. The place would call me, and 9 times out of 10, they gave me the job before I even got off the phone. And we negotiated pay and vacation and everything at that point on that interview, and I wrote my own contracts. So I got to work the schedule I wanted when I wanted, always.
And that was 7 years?
For 7 years, I did that. That was so amazing.
Did you own or rent a home, or were you?
The first assignment that I went on, I allowed my company to do the housing. And once I saw how they were wasting money on housing, I bought a camper and said, you know what? I'll put that housing money in my pocket and I'll take care of it myself.
Oh.
So that's how you make money, because they were giving me $2,000 a month tax-free for a housing stipend on top of my paychecks.
Get out. That's interesting.
So they can either pay $2,000 a month for me to live somewhere, or they give me the $2,000 and I find somewhere to park my trailer for $200 a month. I'm making $1,800 tax-free.
Huh.
So that's how you make your money as a traveler. And then the more credentials you have, the more pay you get. And the length of contract has a lot to do with it as well, because we are to them a per diem employee. They're not paying our insurance. They're just paying an hourly rate. So if I only want to stay there 3 months, I can sign a 3-month contract. But at the end of the 3 months, they always wanted to extend. So I can extend if I want. And if not, I'll say, you know what? Never mind. I want to go somewhere else. So it just depended. And I got to go everywhere. I've seen every state now except Hawaii. And I have zero desire to go to Hawaii. Never want to even go there.
You're the first human I've ever heard say that sentence.
Hawaii's a joke. You can go to Hawaii and spend tons and tons of money and be treated like dirt because Native Hawaiians don't like white people. Or you can go to the Caribbean and be a queen where they love you, and $1 American is like 50 of theirs. So would you rather be a queen with tons of money or a pauper? I ain't going to Hawaii. I'm going down to the Caribbean. I'll be a queen.
Queen Kelly.
No kidding.
Your Majesty.
Oh my God, they love fat white chicks down there with blonde hair.
So either way, I'm paying. The prospect of my... Anyways, we want to talk about me becoming a queen. Tell me more. What? Give me some of your travel highlights, some of the places that you most enjoyed.
Well, I spent my first year traveling all over New York. I lived in a place called Little Falls, New York, which is kind of like in the middle of the state. A really, really cute little town on the Erie Canal. And then I lived up in the Adirondacks, and I lived in Montreal while I lived in Plattsburgh, New York. I lived in Rochester for a short time. I lived in Utica for a little while. And then I went to Maine, and that's amazing. Maine is so beautiful. I was up in the very, very northern part where they have the highest moose population. And there's over 1 million acres of land up there that's owned by a paper company. And so it's all private land. And it's just gorgeous forest. And they have all kinds of public campsites in there. You can go through there.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Absolutely
it.
beautiful. The cleanest water I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Do you still have friends up there, right?
I do.
Are those friends from the time when you were a nurse, or?
Yeah, I met them on my first travel assignment up there, and I've been friends with them ever since, and we've gone on yearly vacations ever since.
Wow.
But I spent 2 summers and 1 winter up in Maine. I spent a fall season in Connecticut where I spent a lot of time on the Yale campus. I'd go over there and hang out and get drunk and have a picnic on the campus and just pester smart folks walking past me. That was my fun thing. I'd sit there and smoke a doob and drink a bottle of wine and heckle smart people.
What's that Matt Damon movie? Where he's the janitor at like Harvard or something. You got you have a different version. You got the Fast Times at Ridgemont High version of Yale and
Joe Dirt. Dear Tay. But that was a lot of fun. I actually dated a professor from there that I met. He was cute. Let's see. And then, Florida. I went to Florida numerous times. Both coasts. All over the place. Florida is really, really beautiful. I did a lot of camping when I was there. That was a lot of fun. Love beaches. Love water. I lived for a year on the Navajo reservation out in Arizona. I set up my camper where Monument Valley was basically the view out of my kitchen window of my camper. And that was so nice because there was like wild horses just walking around and cows and sheep and goats everywhere. It was just animals all over the place on the reservation. It's absolutely beautiful. Then I spent a year in California. I worked at one of the biggest trauma centers in the United States, and it was amazing. We had 2 different triage units. One was for walk-in patients in the front of the ER, and then in the back of the ER, we had another whole triage section just for ambulances, because sometimes there would be 30 ambulances lined up at one time.
Was it near LA?
No, we were in Fresno. We were north of LA, about 2 hours north. But that's where all the gangs are. Mm-hmm. So in our trauma bay, we had a 6-bed trauma bay, I think it was. The floor was blood almost every night because we had gunshot victims constantly. We had gunshot gang wars in our ER because they didn't kill the person and the person got into the ambulance. And so the gang members followed the ambulance and broke into the ER to finish off the person that they didn't kill. So we had that a couple of times. So that was pretty interesting. Like, whoa.
What year was that?
That was in 2009.
Wow.
Yeah. It was that crazy then. It's even worse now. Because I still have friends at work out there. I talk to them all the time. I'm like, whew, I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. I'm so glad I'm out of the healthcare business because it is crazy.
Well, you're still in the healthcare business. You're just
I'm on the wrong side of the side rail now.
Yeah.
It's better to be on the outside of the side rail, not the inside.
When did you first go to South America?
I went on my first mission trip in July of 2013.
Okay. So you kind of caught the travel bug while working.
I've always
diagnosed.
loved traveling.
Okay.
And when I got sick in 2010, I thought all of my travel days were over. I thought everything was done. I thought I was never going to be able to do anything ever again. And as I started getting better, a friend of mine from California started her own nonprofit. It's medical missions. And she had called me the one day and she goes, I know that you can't really work as a nurse anymore, but you have a lot of knowledge. And would you please just come and mentor some students? And all you got to do is talk. You don't have to do anything physical. Just be there and guide them. Be a resource. And I said, you know what? That sounds like a lot of fun. And I said, well, how long are you doing this? And she goes, well, I'm going to try and plan 3 months worth of trips. And I said, oh, okay. And she goes, well, each group of students will come for a week. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds really great. So I went ahead and booked a trip for the whole 3 months. I'm like, fine, I'm going to Peru for 3 months.
Wow.
And I got all set to go. And then she calls me back and she's like, well, I only have 2 weeks out of that 3 months that I'm going to have students down there. And I go, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm going down there for 3 months. Let me know when you'll be there. Because I already booked my trip. I wasn't going to change it. Because a friend who's a pilot actually got me a first class round trip ticket to Peru and back free. So I was like, I'm going no matter what.
Wow.
So then I started a GoFundMe page. I thought, well, I'm going to have all this time. I might as well have some fun while I'm there. And I didn't have any money because after going through my cancer treatment, I lost my job. I lost my insurance. I lost my vehicle. I lost my camper. All I had left was my house. And I had 2 cats. And I was like, I guess I can go to... I'd hire somebody to take care of my cats. I'll go down. So also at that time, I was a benefactor of a class action lawsuit against the VA over differential pay. I was a night shift nurse my entire career, but whenever we took vacation days or sick days, the VA they only paid us daytime wages. So a class action lawsuit had sued the government for all that extra money they never paid us. Wow. So 4 days before I was supposed to leave for Peru, I got a big fat check from the government for all that money they owed me for them 14 years I worked nights, and they never paid me differential on my days off. Every vacation day I ever had, every sick day, every holiday for 14 years, they had to pay me differential pay for all those hours. So I got a huge check. I put that bitch in the bank and I was like, later. So I got to Peru and I actually knew some people there because a friend of mine from high school had married a Peruvian. So I had a family connection. So when I got to Peru, I hooked up with this family that I knew in Lima, and I stayed with them for 2 days while I got a cell phone, a Peruvian cell phone. And then I got tickets to do some other touring and such. So I went to Cusco and I went to a school and I offered to teach English if they would teach me Spanish. So I worked with 4-year-old kids and taught them English, and they taught me Spanish because I didn't know any Spanish. So I stayed there for 6 weeks. And then while I was doing that, I also volunteered at the hospital in the pediatric ward and took care of the little kids and played with the little kids in the pediatric ward, because the kids at the hospital are basically orphans. Because in Peru, their culture is if they have a child that has a disability, they give it away. They don't keep it. And that's not illegal in that country because it's a third world country. They don't have laws and morals like we have, and they don't value life like we do. So anybody that has a child with a disability, they just give that child away. They don't want it. So there was 65 kids living in the pediatric ward at the hospital that were all orphans. And they were just living there forever because nobody wanted them. So I would go there a couple times a week and play with the kids and, bring balloons and just make an ass out of myself, running around goofing, playing with them and, making them laugh and having a good time. So then I went on a couple of trips too. I went to Machu Picchu. That was amazing. I went to Cusco and hung out there, and I went into the jungle in the Amazon, and I swam with pink dolphins and went looking for caimans and snakes and tarantulas, and I swam with piranhas, and I went fishing and caught piranhas and ate them. That was so cool. And then my friends from California finally showed up, and we did our mission for 2 weeks in the desert. And then I came home, and then that really had me inspired to do some mission work. And I have a friend who recently moved to the Dominican Republic. So as soon as I got home from Peru, I was only home for like 2 months. I was like, screw it, I'm going down to the Dominican. So I went down to the Dominican right away, and I stayed down there for 3 months. And my friend and I started a mission down there through a Christian church that we found. And it was just a food program. We were just buying, there's like a Peruvian type Costco in one of the big cities, which is like 4 hours away from where my friend lives. So we went into the big city to this like Costco type store and bought, he has a Jeep, and we filled his Jeep to the limit with all kinds of bulk foods and stuff. And we took it back and divided it all up. And by the time we got done, we had enough to feed 45 families out of all that food for a whole week. So we started this program. Once a month, we would distribute food. So we ran that program. We've been running that. It's still going on. It started that in 2013, and it's still going.
Wow.
So I have that I'm working on.
Can people find out information on that project, or is
No,
it kind
not
of
really.
under the radar?
It's too hard to get any kind of paperwork or anything with the government down there. So it's just me and my buddy doing it on our own with our own money, because we've tried to file for the proper paperwork and the 501c3 and all that, but we can't get it because of
Like an NGO and
we can't do that down there.
Huh.
The government he's got dual citizenship, and they won't allow him to run it down there they're bribing him basically, and he won't pay the bribes. So they won't let us do anything legal like that. So we're just me and him doing it. Just God knows we're doing it. That's all that matters.
So let's rewind. By the way, do you need to take a break? How you doing?
No, I'm good.
Okay. The surviving cancer.
Yes.
Okay. So you're working as a travel nurse for 7 years. What was that, 2008 or 9 when you were diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in 2010.
2010.
So I had been in California, and then I was up in New York for a summer, and it was getting to be fall. And I went, okay, fine, I'll go back down to Florida. I ended up down in Tampa in November. And actually, I went down there in October. It was like the middle of October when I got down there, because it was before Halloween. Because there was a Dunkin' Donuts on the way to work. I remember going and getting pumpkin donuts on the way to work. But I could never keep them down. I kept throwing everything up. As soon as I got down to Florida, I couldn't eat anything. Every time I ate, I vomited. And I thought it was just stress, because the company that I worked for, Sunbelt Staffing, their offices were actually in Tampa. And my assignment was in Tampa. So when I got down there, I was actually meeting my boss and the company that I worked for. And I lived right next door to Busch Gardens, and it was really super exciting. And I bought a brand new camper, and I had a new truck, and life was good. And I thought I just had an ulcer. And I was at work one night in the ER in Tampa, and I was at the Pyxis trying to get medications out, and I passed out. And I woke up later in the bed as a patient in the ER that I was working in, and turns out I'm diagnosed with cancer.
What kind of where was it?
The cancer was actually behind. It's hard to explain. It affected my small intestines and my mesenteric artery, which your mesenteric artery is the blood supply to the bottom half of your body. So all of my major organs from my stomach down were depleted of oxygen and were all dying slowly. My liver, my pancreas, my kidneys, everything. It was lacking blood supply because of this tumor. So God intervened again. It just so happens the surgeon that was consulted to see me down in Tampa had recently moved there from Toledo, Ohio. and had friends and doctors here in Toledo, Ohio that specialized in the type of surgery I was going to need. So I put my camper in storage. I was on the phone for 2.5 days trying to get everything straightened out. Put my truck on a flatbed, sent it up to Ohio, put my camper in storage down in Tampa, put my cats on the plane, put me on a plane, flew up to Ohio. As soon as I got off the plane, got picked up from the airport, taken right to the hospital. And then 2 days later, I had my surgery. And I was only supposed to be in the hospital for a week. Turns out I ended up being in there for over a month because of all the different complications. And then they had to end up keeping my abdominal wound open for 13 months and redoing different surgeries. I had a total of 8 abdominal surgeries in 13 months. So it was surgery, 6 weeks of chemo, surgery, 6 weeks of chemo, surgery, 6 weeks of chemo, surgery, 6 weeks of chemo. My fingernails fell out. My teeth were loose. My hair was, was bald. My toenails were falling out. My skin was all falling off. I had wounds everywhere. I was in so much pain.
Who was with you? Who was with you at this time?
I was living with my daughter and her boyfriend at the time. And my 2 cats, and my daughter had a cat. And Sabrina had already graduated from college, and she was working at Marco's Pizza, delivering pizzas and doing tutoring and stuff. And her boyfriend was working at a gas station or whatever he was doing. And I was trying to live. So it was a good 13 months where I was pretty much bedridden, because when I wasn't in surgery, I had this giant wound vac on me. It was a big machine that kept sucking fluid out of my belly. It was a constant kind of thing. And a nurse had to come out to the house 3 times a week to change the dressing and clean the machine and all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't drive or anything. And then while all this was going on, I noticed my left eye was getting worse and worse and worse. And what happened was my retina detached in my eye, because all the different treatments and medications I was getting with the chemo and lots of steroids, my blood sugars were incredibly high for a long period of time, and it just cut off the circulation to my eyes. And that's why I'm blind now, is from all that. And the one eye had to be taken out because it caused me to have a migraine for about 4 months. And they had to take it out to stop the pain and numb the nerve. Right eye is in that process now. It's almost completely blind, but I'm done going to the doctor, because every time I go to the doctor, they make things worse. So I'm done. I am finished. I was actually supposed to go to the doctor today, and last week I called and canceled my appointment because I'm like, you know what? I'm done paying other people to torture me, and I'm not getting an orgasm from it. So I'm not going to the doctor anymore.
Is that what you said on the phone call?
No.
I'd like to cancel my appointment. Okay, what's the reason? Well, I'm kind of done.
Lack of orgasm.
Can you note on the file? Excuse me?
Your copay is too high.
Oh, so
I've had a really, really interesting and fun, enjoyable life, but I wouldn't give any of it up, because throughout my entire life, God has always been right next to me. I haven't always paid attention to him, but he's always been there for me. And now I am paying attention to him, and he is answering my prayers, and he is taking care of me. And he is giving me more knowledge than I ever thought possible. He is giving me more peace and more joy than I ever thought I could ever handle. And I just want to spread that to everybody around me. I want everyone to feel God's peace. I want everyone to know for sure that they're going to go to heaven. I want everybody to feel that.
You feel, normally these conversations are reserved for people who know they're getting close to the end, on this planet.
Well, I faced that, though.
Yeah.
I faced it already. I thought I was going to die. The doctors told me I was going to die.
How many times did they say that?
Oh, my gosh. Before I went into surgery, every single one of them looked at me like I was already dead. I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, before they took me to surgery, they're like, you need a living will, you need a will, and you need a power of attorney, or we're not going to take you to surgery because we don't think you're going to make it. They said that my tumor was so huge that they thought that I was going to bleed to death while they were trying to take it out. So they never expected me to even live past that first surgery. Well, I showed them. I'm still running around being a bitch to a lot of people.
No, you are,
but
I'm interested to tell this part of your story because it's what immediately, it was the magnetic moment for me when I was like, oh my God, this lady is a real deal. You count nothing as your own.
It's not mine.
I know, but I mean, people say that. Right. People
well, see,
say I'm just a
most people
steward,
say what other people want to hear. You have to truly fall in love with God. Your heart has to, when you're a kid and you have your first crush and you have like those butterflies in your stomach, when you're truly in love with God, you feel those butterflies in your heart. Your heart flutters for God. It's not your stomach. It's not lust. It's not earthly. The love that you have with our Creator, our Lord, is so much higher than you could ever experience with another human or an animal or anything else that you think that you can love on this earth. The love that you have with our Lord, once you truly give yourself up to Him and He opens up to you, that bond is so amazing. I can't even come up with words to explain how wonderful it is. He gave me a dream the other night. I've recently been making these videos on YouTube explaining all the knowledge that God has been giving to me recently, because I've been praying for years and years, Scott. I have been begging God for wisdom and discernment and knowledge and the right path and how to use that knowledge. And now that He knows that I truly love Him and I mean what I say, He's answering my prayers. He's giving me that knowledge. He's bringing people into my life that are answering questions that I've had for years. And it is just so amazing. It's like God is standing over the top of me with a salt shaker, and He's just shaking gifts and blessings and love over my head. And it's just amazing. So incredible. I want everybody to feel that. I want everybody to get that excited about God.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to that interview with Kelly Hanna. It's always a pleasure to get to listen and speak with her. If that inspired you in any way, or if you know someone who might also have a great story to share, please reach out to us. Fill out the contact form at ancestralvoices.life. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.